Welcome, and we are live to another BDN podcast where we will delve into a remarkable shift in the discourse among African. All right, I got the echo. It's okay. Now it's solved. So, we're going to delve into a powerful article from the Final Call newspaper, this week's edition. As we know, African leaders were at the UN and it got real. The talk got real. But now, is it all talk? Or is there really a rise of Africa? We're going to discuss that when we come back.
Welcome to our weekly Black Diaspora News podcast. Let's begin.
Now, as we know, the annual UNGA 78 gathering in New York City serves as a platform for member states to address pressing global issues. Usually, this is done in very diplomatic and, dare I say it, politically empty and highly inoffensive speeches. But this year, the tone among African leaders, especially, was very different from what we're used to. While some leaders sought closer ties with major powers like the United States, others delivered what could be called real talk. They called for self determination, they called for a reset of the global power equation concerning Africa, and they conveyed uncompromising messages about a new Africa rising from the ashes of a tumultuous history. One of the highlights was Osman Saleh, minister of Eritrea, who stood up and declared, quote, within this calamitous global reality, the African continent has been marginalized, end quote. In saying this, Mr. Saleh even went on to highlight the great resistance movements in Africa as being expressions of the long struggle against colonialism and modern slavery. Now, let's remember, this is all taking place at the UN in New York City. But Mr. Saleh was far from being the only bold voice from Africa that day. In fact, Burkina Faso's Minister of State, Basolma Bazi, lambasted the West for its record of exploitation and its role in perpetuating the wounds of history. We also heard from Mr. Bazi, who called on African leaders to reconcile with their identity and culture to address the lasting impact of colonialism. He challenged the UN's efficiency and sincerity in addressing global issues and urged nations to take their destiny into their own hands. The winds of change, the winds, really, I should say, of a changing African tone were also felt in President Felix Tshisekedi's words as he declared that his country, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, would take full control of its destiny. After decades of conflict, the nation seeks stability. And this is not just limited to Africa's internal affairs. African leaders are demanding a diplomatic solution in the Russia Ukraine conflict, showing a distinct contrast to some Western leaders. Then we also heard from South Africa's president, Cyril Ramaphosa, boldly challenging the inequitable arrangements between the global north and the global south. He raised the plight of women and criticized wealthy nations for not delivering on their commitments to mitigate climate injustice. Now, all of this is pointing to a very, very different and much more fierce tone coming from African leaders in their address to the UN. Not since the late Colonel Muammar Gaddafi have we heard such strong voices for Africa coming from the rostrum of the United Nations. Africa has recently experienced multiple power shifts. That's something we must remember. With nations like Gabon, Mali, Guinea, and Burkina Faso experiencing important leadership changes and also attitudes toward their former Western colonial powers, and I really should say slave masters. We're now getting a new sense of self-determination sweeping across the African continent, taking us back to the days of the great Pan-African leaders like Kwame Nkrumah, Thomas Sankara, and Patrice Lumumba. It's a pushback against exploitative former colonial powers like we have not seen in a long time. And it's consistent with important international shifts like the expansion of the BRICS bloc and the organization of the Group of 77. These changes are indicative of a new world emerging where Africa no longer intends to be the tail and is instead finally making a move, or so it seems, to become a global power and leader among the nations of our planet. The question is, are these African leaders all talk, no action? I guess we'll have to wait and see. But as we witness this seeming transformation on the motherland, we can't help but to be reminded of the words of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, whom we were blessed to hear from today at the Nubian Leadership Circle Summit. He warned of a time when the tides would change for the wicked rule, a time when the consequences of exploitation and war would catch up with those responsible. In his timeless words, Minister Farrakhan reminds us that when nations deviate from the path of righteousness, there are consequences. Today, we see those consequences manifesting as African leaders strive for sovereignty, independence, and the realization of their people's dreams. This is a powerful moment in history. And as the spirit of African leaders is reinvigorated, we can only hope that their pursuit of justice and self-determination will lead to a brighter future for the continent. Stay with us as we delve deeper into this, and we are going to be joined by our mighty panel to get down into the details of it. Was this real? Is Africa rising, or is it all talk? We'll talk about this right after this break.
We don't sleep when the sun goes down. We don't waste no precious time. All my friends in the loop, making up for teenage crime. Making up for teenage crime. We don't sleep
all right. So we're back with a mighty panel. It's good because the last episode, we only had Brother Gabriel, and the episode before that, we only had Brother Abdul Sabir. Now we're blessed to have both of you on. So very happy to have you, Brother Abdul Sabir Muhammad and Brother Gabriel X. So let's get right into it. So I'd like to, start with a question. The first one. So, in light of the recent passionate and unapologetic addresses by African leaders at the United Nations General Assembly, from your perspective, what impact do you believe their bold stance will have on the global stage, especially in terms of African self-determination and international diplomacy? So I'll start maybe with actually Brother Sabir. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Yes, sir, brother. Thank you. I'm really honored to be here. I thank Almighty God for the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, the final call, the FOIs who go out to push the program, the MGT, and the wonderful writers of the final call newspaper, and the editors and all those that are involved in helping Allah's servant to push the truth, share the truth worldwide, enlightening all of the members of the human family. My take on the article, beautiful article by Brother Jiran, and what it brought to my mind was is a paradigm shift, and the paradigm shift it's not made in a vacuum, because the leaders are speaking from historical references. I think when you look at the historical reference of the Berlin Conference, you look at the transatlantic slave trade, and then you come all the way up to the establishment of the so-called United Nations. But what's problematic that the African nations are experiencing is they're asking for reform. They're speaking with a loud voice. They're actually looking at the global GDP's output that they're producing, and the amount of people that is in their countries that are being marginalized, and the way that the preamble is set up of the United Nations with these permanent members, and these permanent members with the veto power, what they're actually, to really look at it, you have Russia and China. So Russia and China now, they have experienced something that is unprecedented, because when they witnessed the murder of brother leader Muammar Gaddafi in 2011, what preceded that is his pointing out the wrong of the United Nations, which is the first step in the 8 steps of atonement. And when he had a chance to speak at the United Nations meeting, he showed them the hypocrisy. So he actually pointed out the wrong of the so-called United Nations, because since it's been established, they have more wars on worldwide. So it seems the United Nations, in my experience, they're a promoter of wars. They're a promoter of weapons of mass destruction. They are promoters of the military industrial complex. This is what drives them. And this new paradigm shifts is assassinating the head of the chairman of the African Union, brother leader Muammar Gaddafi. A lot of people have awakened. I remember I saw a video where Vladimir Putin asked the question, who gave the authority to assassinate a head of state? And where's his gold? And look at Libya now. Look at Iraq. So there's awakening. Not only the leaders, but the leaders represent the man and the woman on the ground. So as we go back to brother leader Muammar Gaddafi, he did the wisest thing by pointing out the wrong of the United Nations. Now, when a person does not want to recognize the wrong that you're pointing out. What did they actually do to brother leader Muammar Gaddafi in Libya? This is what's causing the eruption. This is what's causing the African leaders to awaken. And they're awakening because they're seeing the global injustice, and it's been sanctioned by the so-called United Nations. So they're now speaking with one voice. The global South, not Africa alone, but the global South is being resurrected. And I want to add one more point. The 28th anniversary of the Million Man March. But the first year anniversary, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan spoke in New York City, in the front of the United Nations. I was there at the Million Man March. I was there in New York City to hear a wonderful warning from the messenger of God, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Listen to the topic. The address was entitled, "Can the United Nations avert the war of Armageddon?" So when you get to a point where you point out the wrong, and all the leaders are pointing out the wrong, then God has to intervene. And this is what we're seeing. There's an eruption of the God force among the people. So
Yes,
the
sir.
global South, the messenger of Allah said, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he said, if a people would not treat you right, don't go there. So BRICS, I think that's part of your next question. So the establishment of the BRICS.
How do you know my next question, brother?
So the global South has arisen because they realize we're not wanted here. So we got to go and build our own. So I'm going to just put a pause. I can't wait to hear my colleagues, brother Gabriel X, give his take on this wonderful article. So I will yield back the rest of the time. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you, brother. Yes, sir. Brother Gabriel.
Yes, thank you again for having us on your platform, Brother Roger. It's a privilege. It's
It's
not a
our
due.
platform, brother. It belongs to the Muhammad Study Group.
Praise be to Allah. So yes, coming back to the speeches that we heard at the UN, the one who impressed me the most is indeed Burkina Faso's Bassolvin Bazier speech. That was the one with the more strength, conviction, and most importantly, truth. And he was talking about effectively, like what Abdul Sabir was saying, the hypocrisy of the UN and many other things. If people have not seen that speech, they need to go on YouTube. It's available in French because the brother spoke in French. But unfortunately, it seems that the members of the UN don't really care about Africans represented, because if we compare the empty seats with when the President of the United States of America spoke, I don't have the feeling that they actually care about them. So that's a problem to me. However, of course, his particular stance that he had must be replicated by the African nations without timidity or shyness, and this to create a motion that will facilitate the ongoing rise of the continent, because there's already a movement up, an awakening, if you want. So the unity promoted by the nation ousting European pawns, I would call them, from position of authorities, must materialize. So basically, this will allow a greater leverage in international diplomacy, and also give confidence to the other nations remaining under the oppression of colonialists like France, for instance, or England, Belgium, whatever. So I think this is a crucial step in the rise of Africa, and in other words, in self-determination. So that would be my answer to your first two questions, basically.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. All right, wonderful. We're gonna go to the next question. In doing so, I just want to basically take a moment to remind everyone, because what we're discussing here, we got it from somewhere, and we want to share with the world where we got it from, and we want to encourage everyone to go directly to the source. So if you would like to engage, well, first of all, we left the link for the article in the description for this video so you can access it directly. But if you would like to continue your journey of staying on top of a world that is clearly on its way down, and where there is so much chaos, so much happening, and at the same time, a new world is coming up, definitely subscribe to the Final Call newspaper. If you are in the Montreal area, we can come and deliver this directly to your home. You just have to contact us at gem02@gmail.com, and we will deliver the physical paper to your home. And if you're not able to get the physical paper, you can definitely subscribe. You see the link right below, finalcalldigital.com. You can also access it to our bit.ly link, FCN Digital Subscribe. And that way, the Final Call, we can let them know that this subscription came through their brothers up here in Montreal, Canada. So that was just to let everyone know. And also, we want to let everyone know, if you are in the Montreal area, please come and visit us at the UNIA 2741 Notre Dame West, Montreal, for the powerful Day of Atonement lecture delivered by the National Assistant Student Minister Ishmael Mohammed on behalf of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, with the title Atonement and the Great War. Now, we see what's happening in the world today, right? Well, this is where you're going to get some powerful answers. So just wanted to put that out there for those of you who would like to join us. And if you are not in Montreal, you can tune in on noi.org/webcast. So back to our discussion. I have a second question regarding actually the article and this topic. The strong pushback against historical exploitation and a renewed focus on sovereignty, sovereignty in Africa, seems to be part of a broader global trend. How do you see the changing dynamics in international relations and organizations like BRICS and the Groups of 77 influencing this African resurgence? And what challenges might African nations face in realizing their aspirations? We'll go with you, Brother Sabir.
Yes, sir, brother. Beautiful question. The way I see it is, when you go back to the Berlin Conference and the carving up of the motherland, you have the British taking part, and then you got the French taking part, and other countries, European countries. But when we look at ECOWAS, there are formation. There's an economic from the western part of Africa, the countries economically doing business with the West and other nations, other countries. But when you look at the recent phenomenon that's going on in the eastern part, in the part dealing with that was colonized under the French, when you really look in the dynamics that's taking place right now, you will see that there is a pushback to colonization, but it's an economic pushback, because the economics plays a lot in the destabilizing of countries. So when you look at the BRICS, last 2 months ago in the month of August, you have Russia, India, China, South Africa. The meeting was held in South Africa, and you have Brazil. So the most recent gathering was in South Africa. And at that meeting, they added 6 more nations who would like to be a part of the BRICS group, because they are not responsible, but when you look at the output of oil production that those nations are producing, They have a global power that is being used and tapped into by the Europe and America, and they're being manipulated. So, but they've never really come together in a way that they can form an economic pushback, an economic union, an economic bond. And then when you really look at the how the World Economic Bank and has been monopolizing and getting African nations into debt. So the BRIC group has a bank now that is financing all of their undertaking, because a lot of these countries that Europe and America is getting the raw material, they do not allow manufacturing in those nations. They just take the raw material out, transport it, and there's no manufacturing there. There's no, and to manufacture, you have to have some kind of way of producing energy. So you need nuclear power to produce, to run your industrial industry. And with those industrial industry, now you can give jobs to your people, and you don't have that brain drain that's taking place trying to cross into Europe, that the young in Africa are trying to get a better life. So they're trying to escape, and then by the murder of brother leader Muammar Gaddafi and the destabilizing of the African continent, you're seeing now that what's being produced there is a destabilizing of countries that can never develop. And that is the way Europe and America would like them to remain. Never organize, never establish a stable government so that we can get the raw materials for little or nothing. And when a good leader rises up to try to establish something good for those nations, that he's assassinated from within. And because they have these puppets that are being financed and they're selling out. So we're seeing now a rise of this global south. We're seeing in this global south with Russia, I believe, and China being part of the United Nations group. It's a new paradigm. It's a new dynamic that we're looking at, because they have a lot of experience, and Russia or China has never colonized the African country. So there's a false narrative also that is being pushed by Europe and America to make the Africans and globally to be afraid of Russia and China, who have never colonized us. But they're allowing African countries to develop infrastructure that will have a stable economy and to keep the youth from leaving, trying to get a better life. So the global south is our friend. BRICS is our friend. And from what I saw with the last meeting, there's at least another 40 nations who would love to join on. They have made their application to join on. So now we're seeing Saudi Arabia want to be a part of BRICS. We're seeing Ethiopia now in a part of BRICS. We're seeing Egypt now a part of BRICS. Argentina. So now we're seeing these quote unquote nations that the West had dominance over through the monetary system are now making a break, a clean break, but they're breaking in such a way it's a divine unity. And I believe it's on the coming of Almighty God Allah, who is initiating this unity and this uniting force of righteous. The whole psyche of the original people is family oriented. And one of the pushbacks that we're seeing on the African continent is a lot of these loans that are being given by the World Bank has a string attached to it where they're promoting lesbianism and homosexuality, which is something completely against the family structure of China and the family structure of Russia, the family structure of the African Union. They're not with that. They're not against anyone who is in that lifestyle. But that, to me, that's more of a death style than a lifestyle. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, sir. All right, brother Gabriel.
Yes, so just before a little correction, it's the article is by Brian E. Mohammed, And another comment, a comment I have is that for tomorrow it's 3 p.m. because it wasn't on the flyer you've shown. So these are two elements I wanted to come back to. But can you repeat the question, brother, please?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right. So the question was essentially when we look at the strong pushback, uh, against these historical exploitations and what seems to be a renewed focus on sovereignty in Africa, like we saw in the days of Kwame Nkrumah. It all seems to be part of a broader global trend. So, how do you see the changing dynamics in international relations and organizations like BRICS and the Group of 77 influencing this African resurgence? And what challenges might African nations face realizing their aspirations?
Yes, I agree with Brother Blue Sabir. He made it clear BRICS is brewing change. It's definitely doing something for the oppressed nations around the world. So I certainly agree with that. I don't believe the G77 has any influence at all, considering it has been there since 1964. A little bit like Brother Blue Sabir was saying that the UN is supposed to be there to safeguard peace, and we've just seen an explosion of wars all over the world. So brother was very right and exact about that. So again, the G77, no credibility to me. It's my opinion. I mean, it's a branch of the United Nations, so I'm not really convinced. I believe BRICS has a bigger effect for the nations looking upward for a change, for an alternative of the United States and the European powers. And I believe also that the African nations are growing tired of being exploited, especially by Europeans. And I believe BRICS could be a source of inspiration to Africa, that the dominion of the United States of America and Europe is coming to an end. So therefore, motivating Africa to stand up and do for self. That would be the first part of the answer I would give. And the challenges, I believe the first challenge is to basically get rid of the artificial debt made by the IMF, central banks, and the World Bank. Abdul Sabir talked a little bit about that. So as long as Africa doesn't have independency of its money, she will continue to be manipulated and driven to the abyss, in my opinion. So that would be the first part of the challenges. The other one that I'm seeing quickly is to, like brother said, block all foreign meddling through the dissatisfied people in African nations, because, like brother said, that's how they get in. So we can expect the Western Zionist controlled media to vilify any African government, preventing by all means necessary treacherous coups, to then justify military intervention as the West usually do, and put back their pawns and powers to still keep controlling Africa. So that's the challenge, is to really be able to block that meddling by the West, basically. So that would be my two elements for your question, brother. I yield my time.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Um, we have one more question. We're gonna have to be brief because it's already 8:04. We try to stay within a 40-minute max time. So we have a last question where we quoted the words from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, again, whom we heard today. And if you did not hear him, please go on Facebook and YouTube and search for that incredible, um, those incredible remarks by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So timely. Um, but now, the words that we quoted from the minister highlight the idea that actions have consequences. Now, how do you interpret the consequences of past colonialism, exploitation, and global power dynamics in the context of Africa today? And what role should the international community play supporting African nations on their path to self determination and development? As we know in the Muslim program, that that the Honorable Mr. Louis Farrakhan quoted today at the Nubian Circle Summit. Um, we're we're asking in one of the demands that we want to be given a land that is minerally rich and support in that land, right, for a protracted a certain period of time. So in that sense, if we look at Africa, who's already on its own land, but now it's trying to come up, what role should the international uh, community play, I guess, in a reparatory manner, uh, in light of the words we quoted from the minister? So we'll start with you, Brother Abdul Sabir. Again, we'll have to go brief, but I know you can go. You can go strong.
Yes, sir, brother. That's a very beautiful question, because what the African leaders, as I listen to them, there is a theme of reparations, and they speak also for the blacks in the diaspora. I know that there's a reparations meeting coming up in November, I believe, in Ghana, and I believe it's going to be one of the most recent powerful. And then we heard the African president of Kenya, and he was pledging to give free visas to blacks in the diaspora. But the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, in his beautiful book, Torchlight for America, he talked about land should be territory, should be set aside on the motherland for those of us who would love to return, that have never given up our citizenship. And also land should be set aside 8 to 10 states in America. But if our brothers and sisters, the African leaders, they should take a step, one of the first steps, in acknowledging whatever part that was played, and set aside territory for us, giving us dual citizenship, and allowing those who would love to return. Also in the Muslim program, it talked about opening up all of the federal prisons and allowing the prisoners, the black prisoners, that there's so many black men and women falsely accused, and how could you be guilty in a injustice, not a justice system, but an injustice system? Everybody's innocent in an injustice system because those who are running it are criminals. It's a criminal justice system run by criminals. So we're still kidnapped. But setting aside territory that's minerally rich on the African continent would help us tremendously. It would be a tremendous help to those brothers and sisters in the Caribbean, in Europe, in Canada, in America, who would love to return. Free visas with land set aside, and the finance. And of course, the Muslim program is to help us to go for self for 20 to 25 years, and then we can go on our own. So I believe that that is a wonderful program that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And if implemented, and when it is implemented, I believe that it will be implemented. And that is the key. So the brothers and the African leaders who are speaking that language now, to me, that is the resurrection. That is the international resurrection, the global resurrection of the mentally and spiritually dead that we're actually seeing right before our eyes.
Thank you. Wa alaikum salam. Thank you, brother. Yes, sir, Brother Gabriel.
Yes, for the part of to interpret the consequences of past colonialism, I would refer people to go to The Fall of America by Elijah Muhammad. I'm quoting the book, of course, and to look up page 1783 and 186. I'm going to be brief. I'm just going to quote the first page for the sake of time. Yeah, on page 17, he tells us that the solution to all these problems lies in a clear-cut understanding of the truth. And then in the same page, he tells us that, first of all, you must know the truth about God and the devil. And I believe Africa is coming to know who the devil is and acting upon that knowledge. The devil promises only to deceive, as we know, and Africa knows very well about being deceived. So that would be, if you want, cause and effect to your question. And lastly, about the second part of your question, which is what the international community, how should they play it, basically. To be brief, I believe that those who did do wrong to Africa must correct their wrongs as soon as possible for their own sake. As we can see, Allah is sending waves of divine chastisement, and I have sent you a picture to prove my point, that you could show the auditory, and this would be it. They have to basically do the 8th step of atonement that we're talking about, the Million Man March anniversary. That's basically what they have to do to prevent even more damage to their countries. So that will be my answers to your last question, brother. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you both, Brother Abdul Sabir Muhammad and Brother Gabriel X. This was a great discussion based on the greatest newspaper in the world, the Final Call newspaper. Again, if you did not get your copy, please get your physical copy or get it online. And if you did not get a chance to read the article that we based this discussion on today, then we highly encourage you to do so. Great article by Brother Brian E. Muhammad, Is Real Talk by African Leaders a Sign of the Time? So on that note, again, we thank you for lending us your ears and your eyes tonight. We look forward to catching up next week, God willing, for another episode as we cover more of the news, the independent news from the Final Call newspaper, with my colleagues, Brother Gabriel X and Brother Abdul Sabir Muhammad. Again, thank you, and we look forward to seeing you all next week, inshallah. And happy Holy Day of Atonement.
There is a need in our community for a universal change. And it has to start with the man. Being a man of God means being a man possessed of the knowledge, the spirit, and the power of God, anointed to do his will. To build a people, you first